boys won't hesitate to run up on your boy. 엉덩이 빵빵빵 남자들은 탐탐탐 내 입술 냠냠냠 어딜 가도 탕탕탕 등장은 짠짠짠 뛰자 뛰자 팡팡팡 디스코 팡팡팡
Assalamualaikum and greetings to Dr. Mijan and our fellow classmates. In this video, we will cover the different techniques of preserving meat, the process for each of them, and also the advantages and disadvantages. Without wasting any time, let's get started. So, what is meat preservation techniques and what is the reason behind it? The principles of meat preservation are mainly associated with preventing or delaying microbial spoilage and chemical action. Moreover, to avoid as far as possible weight loss and any change in taste or texture. Methods of preservation are based on control by low or high temperature, reducing available water, or by the application of chemical additives. We will go through one by one, starting with smoking, curing, canning, drying, chilling, freezing, and lastly, freeze-drying.
Smoking, by definition, is a method of cooking meats and other foods over a fire. The types of smoking comprises of hot smoking and liquid smoking. Hot smoking is a process of slow cook and smoke at the same time which air temperature is increased carefully controlled to raise the meat temperature. Meanwhile, liquid smoking is a process where pressurized air is applied to vaporize the condensed liquid smoke to create the same smoke environment in a smokehouse as burning actual wood would. In general, smoking process begins with cleaning such as washing and followed by salting, draining, drying and smoking. Smoking gives advantage in reducing fat in smoke as the process requires a very low fat cooking process which doesn't involve oils, fat and sauces. However, it may be harmful process of burning fuels gives rise to chemical contaminants that are carcinogenic.
Curing is a combination of salt, sugar, nitrite and nitrate to the meat for the purpose of flavor and color preservation. Other curing elements such as ascorbic acid, phosphate blend, and spices are also used to prolong the keeping quality of meat. Curing elements is used to inhibit growth of microorganisms by drawing out water from the microbial cells through osmosis. For the method, three types of curing are used. Dry curing is a mixture of meat with salt or other curing elements. Wet curing use spray pumping, stitch pumping, or immersion curing. The combination of both methods use dry and immersion or spray and immersion. In the process, sodium nitrite is added to the meat. Then it reacts with myoglobin in the meat and forms a nitric oxide. When heat is applied, the nitric oxide myoglobin denatured and nitrosyl hemochrome is formed, providing the meat with bright pink color. The advantages of this preservation technique are it makes water unavailable for microbial growth. It also does not destroy the meat nutrients and it is able to preserve the meat for a long period of time. The disadvantages of curing is it produces concentrated form of food. Meat also contains nitrosamine, which is a carcinogenic compound.
Meats and poultry are low acid food pH that above 4.6 that provide a good environment for the growth of the Clostridium botulinum. The cause of deadly foodborne botulism. So canning is the one of the preservative technique for meat. So what is the canning? Canning is the process of applying heat to the food sealed in a jar or a can to destroy any microorganisms which are spore of Bacillus and Clostridium that can cause food spoilage. There are main type of canning. First, water bath canning. Second is pressure canning. Meat products filled in a sealed container are exposed to temperature above 100 degrees Celsius in the pressure cooks. Temperature above 100 degrees Celsius usually range from 1 to 1 degree Celsius depending on the type of product. Must be reached inside the product. During the canning process, air is driven from the can and a vacuum is formed as the can cools and seals. For a basic canning process flow, It starts from the selection raw material, preparation, cooking, followed by hot fill method, exhausting, steaming, and sterilization, cooling, until the last step is storage and leveling. For more details, you can refer into the flowchart.
In drying preservation technique, drying removes moisture from the meat product to inhibit microbial growth. Some of drying meat products are dry sausages, dried meat, and meat jerky that undergoes drying process. This product is capable of being stored in room temperature without rapid spoilage. The method used in drying are natural drying, which is under the sun, solar, or shade drying. For mechanical drying, oven or dehydrator is used to dry the meat. The process of drying the meat is rather simple. It begins with cleaning the meat product. It is then cut into pieces and it is dried according to the desired method. The advantages of drying is the meat can be preserved for a longer period of time, as spoilage by microbe can be avoided due to the absence of moisture. Drying is also one of the easiest preservation technique and it is cheap. The disadvantages of this method is the loss of meat shape due to the shrinkage and meat pieces become smaller, thinner, and change in color. The texture of meat also hardens.
Meat preservation method is known as chilling. Chilling is a process of applying cold ingredients to lower meat's temperature inside a cold chamber with intensive air draw or movement. The most common method of chilling is primary chilling, where carcass is dipped into cold water where temperature reaches 7 degrees Celsius to slow microbial proliferation. Besides that, quick chilling is a method that conducted in small chambers or in cooling tunnels with controlling risk of superficial freezing. Chilling in general carried out in temperature between 1 to 4 degrees Celsius. Chilling is beneficial as it reduces the growth of bacteria, reduces weight loss, and discolorization of the space owing to hemoglobin oxidation. However, it's a costly method as it requires large chill rooms for large scale of production.
Okay, let's talk about freezing technique. Freezing is when meat is preserved at a low temperature for a delayed spoilage and keep meat safe by preventing microorganisms growing and slowing down the enzyme activity that can cause the spoilage. As the water in the meat freeze into ice crystal, it becomes unavailable to those microorganisms that need for growth. There are 3 types of temperature used. Firstly is negative 55 degrees Celsius for an ideal temperature. Second, negative 29 for the degrees Celsius for a commercial temperature. Lastly is negative 18 degrees Celsius for a domestic temperature. There are a few advantages of a freezing. Firstly is minimal preparation. Second, quality of the meat is retained longer as compared to the freezing cooked meat or poultry. While the advantages of freezing, firstly is during the slow freezing, formation of large ice crystal will damage the cells and cause the protein to denature. The freezing process may cause the undesirable changes in the texture of the meat. This occurs as the moisture in the cell expands when frozen and break the cell walls and making them into mushy. The duration of frozen meat lasting for a beef is 12 months, while a lamb 6 to 9 months and the poultry is 3 to 6 months. Lastly, for pork up to 6 months.
And last but not least, freeze drying, which is also known as lyophilization. It is a water removal process typically used to preserve perishable materials, aiming to extend their shelf life and or preparing them for transport. It works by freezing the material, then reducing the pressure and adding heat, allowing the frozen water in the material to change directly to vapor. Freeze drying occurs in 3 phases. For the first phase, which is called the freezing phase, it is done in a freezer, a chilled bath, or on a shelf in the freeze dryer. The temperature uses are between -50 degrees Celsius to -80 degrees Celsius. For the second phase, which is called primary drying phase, is also known as sublimation. This is when pressure is lowered and enough heat is supplied to the meat for the ice to sublime. In this phase, 95% of the water is removed. For the final phase, which is called adsorption, unfrozen water molecules are removed since the ice was removed in the primary drying phase. In this phase, the temperature is raised higher compared to primary drying phase. This is to break any physico-chemical interactions that have formed between the water molecules and the frozen material.
So here is a phase diagram of water showing sublimation of ice.
Once the water is removed from the food, they become very light. Hence, this is one of the advantages of using freeze drying. It will result in cheap transportation of the food. Not only that, freeze-dried food tends to retain most of their nutritional quality, taste, shape, and also size. They do not require refrigeration and can last up to months or even years. However, there are some disadvantages about freeze drying, such as they are quite expensive due to the specialized equipment needed for this process. Not only that, it also takes up much space as fresh foods.